In the rapidly evolving world of homebrewing, the quest for precision, consistency, and quality is eternal. Whether you're a novice trying to avoid that first disastrous batch, or an experienced brewer seeking to fine-tune your favorite batch, let's say Kolsch, one element remains crucial from grain to glass, and that, of course, is temperature control. During the fermentation process, this is where the INKBIRD ITC-308 temperature controller comes into play, emerging as a pretty incredible and useful tool for homebrewers. Hey guys, Joshua here with Homebrew Happy Hour, and today we're going to take a look at one of the most popular temperature controllers on the market, the INKBIRD ITC-308. So in this product showcase video, let's take a look at what comes in the box, as I did just receive this, and so we'll do an unboxing together, and then I'll go over how to configure your new INKBIRD unit. So let's take the ITC-308 out of the box. First thing we are greeted by is a handy dandy user manual. I confess I'm no stranger to throwing these away, but with new electronic devices like this, I suspect I will be using this. So we got that. Oh, and then we got the unit itself with the nice plastic wrap. I will say I was happy. So this came in this box, pretty durable, inside of like an oversized bubble wrap. I already threw that part away, so I can't show that on the video, but it came in an oversized, basically bubble wrap from Amazon, and I was worried because I was like, oh, this thing is probably fragile. The box is sturdy enough. It arrived great, in great shape, no blemishes or nothing. Take that part out, and we can see the rest of it. Here's the, put that to the side. Here's the complete unit itself. Right here, here's the thing you would plug in your fridge to, or a heating pad to, or both simultaneously. This is, according to the box, a 5-foot power cable, which I do believe is long enough for 99.99% of us. Anyone who says they need longer is just lying to themselves. Kidding aside, I can't imagine a scenario where you need more than 5 foot to the power source, mostly because this is probably going to be hanging next to your fridge or your chest freezer, or maybe even mounted on it itself. So like I said, I can't imagine a scenario where you're going to be needing longer than a 5-foot power cable, but maybe you do. I do believe this would probably work with extension cables if you had to. And then last over here, nicely zip tied up, or not zip tied, pardon me, twisty tied up, is the probe. This thing looks like it might be 5 feet as well. I bet the instructions probably say it, but it's definitely plenty long. And this can, if you're using a kegerator, like what me and my pop probably will use it for, it can probably sneak in the back if you have a pre-drilled hole. Wow, that was hard to say, for your gas line. Or it can just, go open the fridge door in the front and sneak this through there. And when you close the fridge door, you shouldn't have any issues. This is a pretty sturdy cable, and this is a very standard probe. So as you can see here, this unit does offer dual stage temperature control, meaning that I could use it to control a heating pad and a cooling device simultaneously. For me, I'm going to be using it predominantly to control just a cooling device, like I said, specifically a fridge that we might use to maintain our fermentation temps in. But it is nice to know that if I ever needed to keep a vessel at warmer temps, I could plug a heat pad into this and then set the temps accordingly, and it will work just as well in that type of application as well. In case you're wondering, like I said, yes, they can operate simultaneously. You can connect a heating pad to the heating outlet and a refrigeration unit to the cooling outlet, and the INKBIRD will toggle between them to maintain whatever your set temperature is. I think that's pretty impressive for a device that this is right now under $30 at Amazon. So not a bad feature to have there. Obviously, the device is plug and play in both regards to plugging this bad boy into the wall and then plugging in your specific device accordingly, and then configuring the unit, obviously, however you please. So it is a 120 volt device for us Americans. That's pretty standard. It's going to work with any old wall outlet. And actually, let me go ahead and get this plugged in so I can show just how easy it is to configure. So I'll be right back. we got this thing plugged in, and we're going to now configure it. You can see, obviously, I don't have anything plugged into this. It would be a much better demonstration if I did, but we're in my office, and I want to show you how to configure it, because I think when you understand configuring the unit, everything else just falls into place. The probe right now, based on the top, is measuring the temperature in this office. I thought my temperature was lower than that, but maybe the hot lights that I'm using to make sure this video is lit decently enough is causing it to go up a little. And then the bottom's this set temp. So let's get into that. To configure your INKBIRD ITC-308, what you're going to be doing is holding down the set button to get into the menu configuration, or pardon me, the configuration menu. One thing I want to note though, after having done this just a second ago and having to do a second take, it goes back to operation mode from configuration mode very quick. So when I'm showing you a demonstration video, I might do some hard cuts so you don't have to see me holding the set button down again to get back into configuration mode, because it goes quick. I'm talking like 15 seconds. So unless I want to talk in 3.5 times speed of then you're going to notice some hard cuts of me holding the set button again to get back into configuration mode. But with that being said, like I said, you hold the set button down until it jumps up to configuration mode. The first setting is TS. That's temperature set value. That's your target temp, guys. Set this to whatever temp you want the probe to be satisfied at. So if I'm using this to convert a chest freezer into a keg freezer, then my target temp would probably be something like 36 or 38, like a standard American refrigerator would be. However, if I'm using this to control, let's say ale fermentation temps, then my target temp would be more likely at 65. Whatever scenario you're using this for, set the value accordingly here. And the way you lock in that value when you're in configuration mode is just by hitting once the set button, which then takes you to the next setting. HD is heating difference. This tells your controller when to turn on any device you have plugged into the heating side plug. You can adjust the value up or down with the arrow keys. See how quick it goes back into operation mode. And real quick, I've never even considered using the INKBIRD with a heat pad, but apparently, judging by the marketing content INKBIRD's made online, it's very common for people to use both simultaneously, the heating side and the cooling side. I'll actually inject a little cartoon right here. Bling! So you can see that they have a carboy, or you can use a bucket, but they have a carboy on a heat pad, which of course the heat pad's plugged into the heating side and the fridge is plugged into the cooling side. And their cartoon, which is a setup I would recommend too if you're doing it this way, they're obviously fermenting an ale and their desired temp is set to 65. They've set a heating difference, that second setting, HD, to 2 degrees, and their cooling difference, which will be the subsequent setting that we configure, they've set that to 3 degrees. All of this configuration just means that when the probe, which they've taped to the side of their carboy, detects the temps of that carboy getting down to 63, the INKBIRD will toggle that heating pad on until that same probe detects the temps to be at 65, which is the target temp again. If the temps, then it'll stop. But if the temps inside that fridge get to 68, which is typically considered on the higher end of an ale yeast strain, then the INKBIRD will toggle the fridge to turn on to bring the temps back down to 65, shutting down the fridge's compressor because, again, that probe has been satisfied. It's reached the target temp. I hope that makes sense. I'll link to that video, the full video below, and go to INKBIRD's YouTube channel if you're looking for very specific content that they've created. Like I've said, I've naturally never really considered using the controller this way, and I just assumed I would probably use the probe with just the cooling side and use it to control my kegerator fridge. But maybe it would be best to utilize both sides. I'm not sure. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Moving on, like I said in my brief rambling, the next setting is cooling difference. And I think y'all kind of understand that part from that brief rambling, but like they had it at 3 degrees differential. I think 3 is probably a safe bet. I'm just going up and down with the arrows, mostly so it doesn't put me back in operation mode. It works. It's, the exact same way as heating difference does, as in when do you want the cooling side device to be turned back on? So I think 2 or 3 degrees variance above target temp is probably the best setting here, which is why they did it. Moving on, again, every time you want to go to the next setting, you just hit set. That locks in the last one. This next setting is AH, which stands for high alarm. This is the setting you'd use when making an alarm to notify you when the actual temperatures reach a certain level. So in our example, if we're using it for ale fermentation and the target temp is at 65, I'm probably going to be worried if my vessel, my fermentation chamber, gets to, let's say, 70. And again, for the sake of it not going into operation mode, I'm just going to go back and forth here. Because then when it gets to 70, I can go, crap, my Kolsch is getting a little too hot in there. And so to set that in at 70 degrees Fahrenheit, I just hit set and it brings me to now AL, which stands for the opposite. It's the low alarm. So again, in this scenario, we're doing a Kolsch. I've already kind of pre-configured it. If it gets down to like that 59, 58, whatever range, we know that's probably a little too cold for primary fermentation. Although, Kolsch is a hybrid, it might do okay there. But your standard ales, you're not going to be wanting to operate, in the mid, higher mid-range 50s. You might set this at 58. That way it'll beep, beep whenever your vessel gets that low, and then you can resolve it however need be. Maybe the fridge door was open, maybe some settings were off or whatever. But again, locking it in by hitting the set button and taking us to the next. This is one of the most appreciated features that I have on this device. PT is the compressor delay time. It is configured in minutes, so whatever you set this at, that's how many minutes it's going to delay your compressor from starting back on. The reason this feature is great is because it's going to prevent your fridge's compressor from turning off and turning on and turning off and doing that too quickly, because that's too taxing on the compressor and it will lead to your fridge dying sooner than it needs to. Most people online that I looked up real quick, and I think the instructions actually might say it too somewhere, say that 3-minute or 4-minute is pretty standard and good. So we're going to set it at 3 there for the compressor delay and hit set to go to the next setting, which is probably the easiest one if you have a brand new unit. This is the calibration. If you're needing to manually offset calibration because you notice your probe is saying it's 70, but really it's 68 because you have some other calibrated analog thermometer that you trust, you could always do an offset on here to compensate for what the degrees that you're off, and it is in fractions. So that's not 4 degree lower, that's 0.4 degree lower. If I was actually trying to go lower, now I'm at 1 degree. So make sure you understand that there is a tiny little decimal in there if you're setting an offset. Again, when you have a brand new unit, you should not need to use this feature because it is brand new and I'm told it is calibrated. It does seem to be reading accurate in my office. The bright lights might be affecting what the temperature reading is because it was showing kind of high 70s when I have this office kind of cooler than that. But either way, if you need to set a manual calibration, CA is the place to do it. You go to set, and that brings us to the last one where before we recorded, I went all the way over here and changed it. CF is Celsius or Fahrenheit. I can just toggle the arrow, one of the arrows, and that is going to determine what the rest of the unit is going to be configured in. So that when you're setting it up, again, here in America, doing Fahrenheit is just how we do things. But if you're in the rest of the world, and I understand, again, Celsius is better. 0 for freezing makes much more sense, and 100 for boiling does than 32 and 112 but my point being, we're here and we're using Fahrenheit. So I come in here, set it there, and to lock it in, I just hit set again, and it brings you back to the top. When you're done configuring your unit, you can either just sit around for 20 seconds so it's going to go back into operation mode, or you hold that set button down again until it goes back into operation mode. You'll see it saying, the probe is saying that my office is set at 78.3. And then I don't know why the target temp went to 77, where I messed up there. But if we were doing a hypothetical, ale fermentation, now it's set at 65. And when I hold setting down, you'll see, boom, there we go. There's actual temp, there's the set temp, and you're good to go. Your devices will be plugged in, and this will be controlling the temperatures to make sure you're precisely in the range you want to be in. So yeah, like I said throughout this whole video, my initial intent and purposes with this is going to be for the fermentation process. I want to control a fridge if I want to do lagers at a certain temp and maintain it, or just making sure my ales don't go out of range, and I'm not doing pressure. Obviously, if you watch any of our podcasts, you know I'm the premier expert on pressure fermentation now, but it's nice to know that I can have precise temperature control with the device like this. And really the future goal of this would be to actually do a Keyser build like what Todd has in his barn and keep it out in my garage, or more realistically build it, put it at my pops, and take one of those kegerators back here because the footprint is smaller. But either way, my point being, this is a versatile enough device that it will future-proof me for whatever scenarios or applications that I need it for. So what are your thoughts on the device? I can't stress enough, kind of like I always say on almost every episode of our weekly podcast, it's the best time ever to be alive as a home brewer, given the incredible technology and toys that we have available at our use. So let us know in the comments below what you think of the INKBIRD ITC-308 and how you're using it. And until next time, happy brewing, my friends.